here, Malloy, who came all the way, caught a plane and came all the way from Seattle, Washington. So we're honored to have you, and we want you to come up and say just whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you, everybody. Wow is the first thing that I can say. How many of you were here in 2004? Anybody here in 2004? Remember my grandfather here? He was here for that. That was wonderful that he got to see it in his lifetime. That was something that was really important to us that he was able to see. So instead of talking about his career or talking about, you know, the community or things like that, which is wonderful, people have already done, I want to talk about 12 things you may or may not have known about Dr. Malloy. Okay? And this comes from right down the street. Okay? So he prayed and meditated every day of his life. Every day. Doesn't matter if he was happy, sad, well, or sick, he prayed and meditated every day. And I couldn't interrupt him in the morning. I used to get up extra early, want to go in there and watch cartoons with my grandmother and grandfather, and I couldn't disturb him. He was there for 1 hour, and that was his time, every day of his life. Number two, he was the sole caregiver for his wife for over 30 years after she was paralyzed by the early radiation treatment for breast cancer. I don't know if anybody knows that. My grandmother was basically a quadriplegic that my grandfather cared for every day of his life after he went home from surgeries, 5-6 surgeries a day over here at KDB to care for my grandmother. And it was the sole caregiver. We never had nurses or maids or anybody to help. It was just my grandfather up late caring for her. It was an amazing thing to watch and help with. He could eat 12 ears of corn in one sitting, and often did. So if you were fixing corn, you better bring a whole bunch because Dr. Malloy would tear it up. He performed the world's number 51 and 52 of the world's operations on a child whose intestines were born on the outside. And before his journal, which he wrote about the procedures that he did, there was a 100% mortality rate globally for children with this condition. And that went down to 0 after his journal was published in 12 languages around the world. So how many children were saved just from that one act around the globe? It's amazing when you think about it. In his later years, he spent time volunteering at the homeless shelter here in Winston-Salem in his spare time. He wouldn't, after he retired, he wouldn't sit down out in his yard or by his pool or anything like that. He was down in the homeless shelter helping people every day, nonstop. And he often would bring people from the homeless shelter to the house to counsel, to comfort, and to welcome them in. And that was just part of our life at the house. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. He did not have the greatest bedside manner. And there's a story. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go with him over to Forsyth for his rounds. And he used to go to each room and go inside the room, and I could either hang out at the nurse's station and eat ice cream, or I could go with him, but I had to stay outside the room while he went in and talked to the patient. Well, one time, I probably was 8 or 9 years old, I remember the patient came walking out into the hallway, and they talked in the hallway in front of me. And the man looked at my grandfather and said, "Doc, this thing you're going to do tomorrow morning, is it going to hurt?" And Doc said, "Yes, it's going to hurt a lot, but you got to do it." And so I remember that moment, and I was like shocked. I was 8 years old, and I was shocked. And the man's expression was even worse. But what we realized is he was honest and compassionate at the same time. And one of his theories is that he was this man's doctor from the second that he was admitted to the second that he left. And it was his job to do every level of service, even the remedial tasks he would do for that person. He would not leave that person's side through the whole process. Now it's a little bit different. But back then it was one-on-one. It was very important to him that was the way it went down. Let's see, where are we at? Sorry about that. Oh, ice cream. Oh my goodness, he could eat some ice cream. That's right, that's right. Let's see, right here, KDB, 5th floor KDB, you can see it right there. He built his house on the hill in Walkertown so that when he was in surgery in that window right there, he could look across town and see my grandmother in the window of the house and know everything was okay. That was his way of having his hand and everything to make sure everything was all right. Everybody was all right. So I don't know if it's still true. Maybe some trees. If someone can get up there and take a picture for me of the house down in Walkertown, I'd love to see that. Let's see. He was Dr. Drew's understudy. I don't know if people knew that. Dr. Charles Drew. And during that time, he helped to develop the system now which the entire United States uses for transmitting blood through the country without having it be spoiled, blood plasma. So you know, just the work that those two men did by itself, not considering everything else, is amazing. Not only what they did, but when they did it. Here we are in 2016 when everybody is supposed to have equal opportunity, a lot more than we used to, but what Dr. Malloy did and Dr. Jordan did in that day is crazy to think about, because people were still segregated. They were not allowed to travel. They were not allowed to get educations. They were not allowed to do anything they are today, but still he excelled and to the point that was to the stars, and it's hard to contemplate. He was known for his scars, and what I mean by that is the scars that he left on his patients, in that the technique back in the day, and still today, was a lower level person in the surgical room would close after the surgeon's work. He refused to do that and would close every surgery that he did. And because of that, everybody else had a Frankenstein scar, and his was thin and beautiful. So people used to look at somebody's belly and say, "Dr. Malloy?" Yep, Dr. Malloy. So it was a master at his art. It was a craft. It was a Michelangelo. It was that kind of thing. It was devotion to his art, his craft, his community, his family that is hard to identify today. But here it is. We see it. It's in our community, and it's thriving. I follow in Seattle the Friends page on Facebook all the time, and I love it. It's empowering to see that he is still touching people to this day in a different way. And I just want to thank the city of Winston-Salem, the community. I wish I still lived here. I miss it very much. I know, I can live that. I can. And you know, if you want my information, come speak to me. I'm the last Malloy there is. And
finally got you, yay!
there you go. And so I'm welcome to tell stories and history, and I have archives of him and Dr. Drew in surgery, and I have letters from Drew to him in the 30s that I'd love to get into the community and share. So if any of you have connections there, please get in touch with me. But again, thank you so much from the Malloy family for this great honor and listening to my stories.
Thank you. It's fascinating stories. Like we all look at the top of this building a little bit differently every time now. We've been joined